and be in the zone and in the flow, and not have to the distraction of my own self in the corner. So I'm just going to stop sharing my video just for the time being. So let me just give you a little bit of background about myself, if I may, and just to explain really why I've come to the place where I am now to talk about these issues with you. My name is Kim Bradley, as Jen said, and I live in Oxfordshire, in the beautiful leafy green suburbs of London, but was originally from Hillingdon in Middlesex, and that's where I was born and I grew up for most of my life. And energy has been a part of my conscious awareness for really as long as I can possibly remember. We've got in my family a very strong spiritual maternal line with my mother and my grandmother and my great-grandmother, spiritualists through many, many generations. And I remember having childhood memories of talking to spirits, and I think my mum took me to see my first clairvoyant when I was about 16 years old. In my 20s, I learnt holistic massage, and that was very much involved with hands-on healing and connectivity with the human body and touch. And as you know, as you get into healing and being of service, your path takes different turns. And so my mother and I together, we went on a 4-year program with the National Federation of Spiritual Healers, which we thoroughly enjoyed together, and became a Reiki master. We both sat in development circles, did such a lot with my mum, and sadly she's not with us now and I miss her terribly, but she was very much an inspiration to me in my early years of energy awareness and development. My path went on to look at the healing energies through mediums like EFT and emotrance, which is, as you know, if you've done these things, it's about your programs and your limiting beliefs and the way our emotional state and the way we think and feel and how that impacts us in our past, present and future. And really it was after all of these this journey, about 7 years ago, I joined a company called Synergy Worldwide. And this is a network marketing company with first-class supplements. And I joined them because I become really interested in exploring nutrition. And that was the next phase of my journey, really, of discovery of healing. And that because I loved their expression that they had, which was to leave a legacy. Quite early on in that journey, I had a very powerful message in meditation about that this was going to be the path I would follow on education around the globe and by spreading that web of light. So now I have a large team of health professionals and health enthusiasts, and we're making a difference to a lot of people. Now, I use a lot of energy dynamics through all aspects of my personal life. And so I'm excited to talk to you about the invisible force of your gut and share some insights into why I feel that this is the next big breakthrough in physical health and in healing. So maybe like a lot of us, perhaps, I think there's someone that's not muted, so perhaps if we could just find out who that is. So like a lot of us, perhaps, I was can everyone hear me? It says, oh, I'm on mute, that's okay. I was taught to think about energy in this sort of way, where we have this human energy field. So when I started to learn about energy, I learned about the chakras, and you learn about opening them, closing them, protecting them, the color of them, the sound, the meaning. I'm sure you've all done this education. The list goes on and on. And in emotrance and EFT, I learned a lot about the meridian lines and how they get blocked and they lead to emotional states and limiting beliefs. And then you have other terms that you may have used, like the aura and the biometric field and so on. There's many, many, many terms for healing and for energy. And I've certainly given a lot of attention to phrases like energy force, life, healing hands, aura, the intention to heal, the intention for the highest good, you know, the power of gratitude and affirmations, and even ideas that were brought into the public domain about from the secret and the power of attraction and so on. So, you know, energy has been something that's been with us for a long time. And it was really just over the last few years that I began to discover a whole new world, a new universe, you might even say, that I had not previously given any thought to, not in my own body or that of my clients. And it's this that is really what I see is the missing link. It's something very important that perhaps we just hadn't really thought about before. And when this really came to me, this sort of concept, it literally blew my mind. And this is the science of the microbiome. Now, you might have heard the term microbiome a lot recently. It's been in the BBC News. There was a series on Radio 4 called The Second Genome. The research in this field is very exciting, and I genuinely believe it will be the next big breakthrough in understanding the origin of disease. So, what actually is your microbiome? Well, it's an acquired organ that begins from the moment of birth, and it consists of bacteria, microflora, viruses, fungi, and parasites that live on us and in us. And I could honestly do a webinar all on its own about how we acquire this microbiome, because it's absolutely fascinating. Because we are born completely sterile, and you know, from this sterile place, we then bring about this complete ecosystem. It's amazing. And although not strictly the microbiome, we also house heavy metals and chemical residue from manufacturing as well. So far, around 10,000 species of bacteria have been found that live as part of our ecosystem, with around 4,000 different species being in the gut alone. And altogether, we are home to around 100 trillion microbes in our body. I mean, that is absolutely staggering, because that's more than there are stars in the galaxy. So you've got to think about that as a force to be reckoned with and not left aside. The latest scientific research has realized that the genes of our human being organ, amount to around 19,000 to 20,000 human genes. Our microbiome outnumbers us 10 to 1, because our microbiome has around 3.3 million genes. And it's the expression of these genes and the way it influences our health that's being unraveled today. So the emerging science has unveiled that the root cause of disease lies within this microbiome on a physical level. And this microbiome is an energy force, and we'll talk a bit about that in a mo, but 2/3 of our microbiome is in our gut, which begins at the mouth and travels through your body like a big long tube until it reaches the other end. That most of it lives in your intestine. And these microbes that are a community and a colony, and they can be working very hard to help us in a symbiotic relationship to be maintaining optimal health and weight, or they can be working against us and causing disease. So when our gut is carefully balanced, we feel fantastic. We sleep well, we have an abundance of energy, we are creative, we're calm and relaxed, our weight is managed better, we don't have cravings, our digestion is excellent, and altogether you feel a whole lot younger and happier. And wouldn't it just be wonderful to feel physically on your A game every single day? So let's have a look at some of these functions that have been discovered about the microbiome. And I'm quite sure they haven't discovered everything yet, but our microbial community synthesizes vitamins, it breaks down our food for absorption, it trains our immune system, and even communicates with the brain. When out of balance, it can lead to inflammation, obesity, tiredness, hormonal issues, and quite frankly, a whole raft of complaints and diseases that generally mean that people are living under par. Now, I'm quite sure that you know a lot of people, and that might even be yourself, that's living under par. Basically, as a human beings, we have set the bar too low. And we think that this is, for some of us that think we're healthy, we think this is our best, and it isn't, because we could be so much more bright and vibrant than we ever think we could be. And this, I think, is going to be one of the biggest foundational keys to unlock, to lift everybody's game in this world and open up some doors. So let's have a look at some of these functions in more detail. So immunity. Well, our gut bacteria actually talk to our immune system. Our immune system is birthed primarily in our gut. Baby immune system cells are there to be trained, and they need to be trained on what they should be reacting to, what's a pathogen or what's going to cause a problem to the body, what's a virus, and what's a harmful bacteria, and what is not a harmful bacteria, what's not going to cause an issue to the body. Also, it's trained to react to things that we breathe in, like pollens. Should we be reacting to pollens, or is that okay? It's harmless. It's not something to worry about. So lots of autoimmune diseases, allergies, the basic source of these comes from our immune system not receiving the right training. Because through chemical messengers, our gut bacteria has a very big role in this relationship. Because when you think about it, our immune system should, in effect, really remove everything that is not a human being. Yet it lives quite happily with 100 trillion microbes every day. So there's something going on, and this is quite key to our immune system's health and well-being. Now, what about brain health? Well, through the pathway of the vagus nerve, there is a communication between the gut and the brain. Now, have we not always talked about, gut instinct, the solar plexus, gut reaction, the hara, and so many other words that I probably can't even think of right now, that depict this energy source that represents our gut area. This is something we have known, but haven't perhaps really thought deeply about its basis. And the brain and the gut is both independent and interdependent. And these microbes can actually influence our thinking, our actions, our behaviors in ways that are, again, positive, or ways that are influence us in a negative way as well. Primarily, the hormones are regulated and manufactured in the gut. So thinking about your happy hormones, 90% of serotonin is made in your gut. Your calmness and relaxation hormone, GABA. So when people are receiving healing and they're going into a deep calming state, is there more to that going on a microbial level? This is what we have to start thinking about. Sleeping better with melatonin, your darkness hormone. And then, fertility and, menopausal issues with the balance of the estrogen and the progesterone. If there's anyone listening that's got the hot flushes and the discomfort going through menopause, this is down to the balance in your microbes and can actually be changed quite quickly. That's another point to say, is that your gut microbes are very responsive very, very quickly, within days. Now we have your love, trust, and self-esteem hormones. So we boost up the oxytocin receptors. And this helps the body to heal mental and emotional trauma. So when you're working with people, you know, you're able to work with them in the physical context of their gut microbes to maybe deal with things in the past. And when I've worked with people with the gut and healing, things come up. Things that come up that were forgotten or unprocessed, they come back up to the surface again to be looked at and witnessed and then moved through and moved on. And it seems to happen, the process, so much easier because your body's working in sync. You have the motivation with the dopamine, which helps us to take action towards, you know, these ideas that we come up with, the ideas that we gifted by God. And we need the action and the motivation to make that happen. And we need the noradrenaline to move our bodies into action. So these are microbe-driven hormones that create chemical change within our physical body and the way we think. So obviously, breakdown of micronutrients, that's perhaps something that we've thought about. You know, you may have heard the phrase, it's not so much of what you eat, it's what you absorb. Very, very true. Although we do absorb all of the sorts of things that we eat, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But, you know, these beneficial bacteria, they break down the fibrous foods. They help to extract heavy metals out of the body. They maintain the integrity of the gut wall. I'm going to talk about that. And certain vitamins, like your B vitamins, you might have clients that say they're deficient in B vitamins. It's quite common. But certain vitamins we don't actually metabolize anymore. We've outsourced processes to the microbes in our gut that provide us with the enzymatic reactions to actually get these vitamins extracted from our food. So all of this microbiome assists us in the metabolic process, which is the energy yielding activity that we need from our food. But again, and we'll discuss this, it can be working for you or against you, because it can be a correct metabolic process, or it can cause obesity, weight gain, diabetes, and so on. So we have to really focus on the fact that that even though science is emerging in the physical world, have we given much thought to the power of this in the energy world? This is where we have this opportunity to think about this and align ourselves with this. Now, let's look at bacteria as an energy life force that is working either in harmony with your body or in disharmony. You know, a few years ago, biologists discovered that some bacteria produce hair-like filaments that act as wires, ferrying electrons back and forth between the cells and their wider environment. And they have a living force that is working for us or against us. And I remember having a conversation with another very gifted healer friend of mine called Louisa. And we were discussing this concept that we hadn't thought of before. And she was saying, well, it's like the primordial soup is in our guts. Now, the primordial soup is that term for when all of life was created in the very first instance of our planet. It happened through the body of water, and the DNA was birthed, and the microbes, the simple proteins that led to microbes. And it's like in these pools of water on the ancient planet of Earth was the potential for all of the life that we see today. Every tree, every animal, every human being stemmed from the primordial soup. And it's like we have been given this primordial soup in our guts. It's like we have a part of it, a piece of it, living in our guts, and not just our guts, but the guts of every animal that ever existed. And if you really think about the power of that, the creative and universal power of that, it seriously could blow your mind. But this is where we have to be thinking now. So, you know, elite health is where we want to help people to be. And most people are somewhere in the middle, amongst metabolic dysfunction. But our daily choices move us towards optimal health, or they move us towards poor health. It's our daily choices compounded over time. So what we call elite health begins by targeting health at its core, which means rebalancing the microbiome to be working optimally for you once again. So why don't we have this elite health? I'm just going to be looking at some of the 3 major factors here for you today. We're going to be looking at diet, lifestyle, and the environment, because your clients that you're seeing will be having issues in any of these 3 areas for sure. And it's something that maybe you can discuss with them. So let's look at diet first. So in the 1950s, a revolution began in farming and food production and processes to enable us to have more food available and for food to have a longer shelf life. Food was dried, canned, bottled, packaged, and processed like never before. Food became a laboratory science of being chemically treated, with stabilizers being added. Food was colored, preserved. They removed the fats because fats go off very quickly. So fats were removed or chemically changed within our foods, and lots of carbohydrates were added. And then they had to somehow fortify the food again to put some kind of goodness back in that had been lost. So basically it moved food far away from animal or plant, which is the origin of what we eat. So just think about that. When you go down your supermarket shelf, how much looks like the original source of animal or plant? And of course, our taste buds began to change as the microbiome changes, saliva in the mouth as well. And we demanded greater ease for the busy lifestyle that we have. And this began to have a profound effect on the microbes who basically have to eat what we eat. And it has devastating consequences. Also, you know, we in the Western world don't, generally speaking, have a diet low in fermented foods that were, you know, that we could have had to cope with this sudden radical change of diet. You have to think that in less than a generation, the way we eat has changed beyond all recognition. So these are some fermented foods that are starting to get more popular and definitely something to investigate more. So let's have a look at lifestyle now. What's going on with lifestyle? So our lifestyle has changed a great deal too. You know, we drink a lot more alcohol than we used to, which has caused like an acidic environment in the body that doesn't support our good microbe community. We've become more sedentary with our lives, with now consisting of, you know, a lot more office work, long commutes perhaps, and, you know, maybe more importantly, technology that has kept us occupied. You think about how much our children use technology these days. It's a lot of sitting around. And generally, people have a lot more stress. If we just go here. So stress has been shown in studies to damage the gut flora. And those with an imbalanced gut flora have been shown to have lower stress resilience. So you've got this relationship where, you know, you've got this, you're stressed, that affects your gut. When your gut's affected, you're not dealing with stress very well. And that's only going to go in a downward spiral, isn't it? But possibly the biggest lifestyle change has been the increase in medication and drugs across the board. And although life-saving at times, antibiotics became prevalent everywhere after the Second World War. I mean, they didn't really exist as a thing before that. So, and people did die of some pretty nasty bacterial infections for sure. So it's not to say that it's not a good invention, but it has had its ramifications. So as it began to be used for even the smallest worrisome infections, to being standard in hospital care, to being given to farm animals as a subclinical dose to keep them healthier while they were living in large herds and cramped spaces. You know, one of the things they also noted is that animals on antibiotics seem to grow fatter and larger And the farmers liked that side effect. But somehow they didn't make that leap of understanding to why that was happening in human beings. Why were we getting fatter and larger as we began to eat the residue antibiotics in our meat, and the manure residue was sprayed on our crops? And it's only been in the last few years where certain antibacterial farming practices have begun to stop in certain places, because they've realized that there's a link between the growing cause of obesity and the subclinical doses of antibiotics we've been fed for many, many years. So, you know, microbes have been discovered that help maintain ideal weight, and some that cause our bodies to lay down fat and demand sweet, sugary foods. So, you know, people who have been clinically obese have a higher level of the bacterial type Firmicutes, and those that are more lean have more of the bacteroidetes. And there's things that we can do to change that on a bacterial scale as well, to actually reduce the Firmicutes and increase the bacteroidetes, to help the body normalize the way it metabolizes its food, because it's about how the body is instructed to use the food as energy, or whether the instructions the body is receiving is to increase the size of the fat cells so more fat can be stored and laid down around the body. And this is what these types of bacteria have a role to play. And they've done many experiments with, you may have seen this on the telly, with twins, one large, one small, and they've taken the gut microbes and put them into germ-free mice, fed the mice the exact same diet, the exact same exercise, nothing changes at all for those mice, but one gets fat and one stays slim. So, you know, there's a lot of evidence going on about this now to unpick what's going on with us, why we're all getting so much larger. So then we have the environment. You know, further changes have happened here. The air quality has changed. Pollution particles have hit the air post-industrialization, certainly more so for people living in cities than in rural areas. And farming moved more and more into pest control, weed control, molds and disease control, and ever more chemicalized farming procedures that began to affect the very soil our plants were grown in. So on top of that, we became a nation keen to kill any known germ, thanks to advertisers and their little cartoon depictions telling us that germs were bad and they must be eliminated. So we set about our own germ warfare on the home front with antibacterial soaps and wipes and cleaning agents and so on. Is it any wonder any bacteria had a chance? And we tried to keep our children germ-free, sterile as possible. So the thing is that no one was telling us that germs are also so very good, so needed, so interdependent to our very livelihood. You know, they were necessary for the training of our immune system and to prevent childhood asthma and allergies and all sorts of things. It really is a pretty sorry state of affairs, you might say. So diet, lifestyle, environment began to affect our guts. And this mix of bad bacteria that are not working for us create what's called endotoxins, which is a toxic residue from bad bacteria in the gut. And these unhelpful microbes cause these endotoxins, which travel out of the gut and into our organs. They get deposited in fat and muscle. They cause insulin resistance. They're the very basis of inflammation and ultimately metabolic dysfunction, which is when your organs or any system within your body is not working at optimal. And there's an article that came out literally only in the last week of how they've linked cardiovascular disease to the gut microbes. We've known this for a long time because it's down to inflammation, and inflammation is tears in the artery wall, which leads to deposits of fat and plaque buildup. But it's the endotoxins that are coming from the gut because the gut is in dysbiosis that is causing the problems in the first place. You have to track everything back to the original source. So endotoxins have been linked to all known epidemic diseases of our time. So this toxicity, metabolic dysfunction, which is basically what it is, leads to a term called dysbiosis, which is when there's an abnormal microbial colonization of the intestine. It creates pathological changes that are harmful to the precious wall of your gut. Now, this is where the term leaky gut comes from. This is a term you might well have heard. You might even have people coming into your therapy practice having sort of talking about it. It basically means the tiny little links between cells are dissolved by this microbe community that's not working in your interest, and small undigested particles of food can enter into the bloodstream. So these particles can travel to the brain through the blood-brain barrier, so they can affect the way we think and inflame the brain as well. And ultimately, a whole raft of recognizable symptoms can be born. So, if you look at some of these symptoms and you think about whether it be yourself or the clients you're supporting, how many of these issues can be tracked back to this, the microbial community that lies within our gut. So, a revolution is coming, and this is what excites me. More and more science emerges by the day. More people are realizing that their gut microbes are friends to be nurtured and cared for and actually given some thought to. It's time to treat our guts like a garden and feed them with prebiotics and add in probiotics, do a regular detox to eliminate the unhelpful bacteria and reduce the endotoxins, extract the heavy metals that we've accrued, and to include these microbes in our healing intention. So one of my colleagues has actually recorded an excellent 20-minute talk on prebiotics and probiotics. Strengthen your good microbes. So if you want to learn more about prebiotics and probiotics, then be in touch and I can share that link with you if you so wish. But we need to go back to basics. We need to eat good whole foods again and choosing organic where possible. We need to move our body more with exercise, which helps to stimulate the gut and stimulate our microbial activity. And as I said, do a detox, especially to get rid of this chemical junkyard. It's been deposited in your cells, especially your fat cells. It's one of the best things you can do to lose weight if you're carrying extra weight, is to detoxify from the endotoxins you're carrying around. And all this will help to rebalance the microbes once again, with the goal being elite health, where you are living your life to the fullest. So next time you're giving healing to someone, think about this. Think about the microbial community on your hands, the skin being the next biggest colony of your microbiome. If you just look at your hands right at this very moment, your healing hands, you have more microbes in the palm of your hands than there are people living on planet Earth. Engage these life forms in your healing intention. Perhaps they have always been responsible for the power of our healing hands anyway. It's something to think about, isn't it? It certainly is time that we gave these microbes more attention and intention through our healing practice. So I'd just like to very briefly tell you about a program that I've been using for the past 2 years, and I've had some incredible changes with people I've been working with. It's called the Purify program. This comprehensive program is a holistic approach. It's a high protein, high phytonutrient and low carbohydrate nutrition plan. It has the transformative supplements within the program. It has light exercise and it has community support, which is so important. And this 21-day program has a huge impact on elevating your health. It just kickstarts your body. It kickstarts mindset, your weight and your attitude to make more permanent changes, to even your taste buds change in such a short time. But, you know, I'm not going to say too much about the program here, as, you know, it's not appropriate to do so. You know, many of you may have your own systems and ideas on healing our microbial life force. And I'd like you to understand more about it and think about it in that way. So if you have any questions, please be in touch. If there's any on the call today, I can answer those. I'd love to hear your experiences. You know, if you've got some gut experiences or you've had some awakening about the microbes and your energy, I would so love to hear your stories about it. If you want any advice or anything that I can do to help with, or feedback about the webinar, then I ask you, please be in touch and let's work together, because I'm passionate about helping all of us change the world together, as there's power in education. And it's really the beginning of true transformation and awakening. So, Jen, I can't thank you enough for having me on this webinar today. And I just really hope that the listeners have all found it very helpful.
It was absolutely brilliant, Kim. Thank you so much for your expertise, your knowledge, the consistency and the clarity with which you are expressing that, because I learned so much. I really, really learned so much. I thought I knew stuff, but I learned so much today. So thank you for that.
That's really kind. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. I'd just like to say it was fantastic. I've heard your webinars of different types before, Kim. You have such a natural way of putting things across, and for somebody who's done the 21-day gut microbiome reset, I can't endorse it enough. It is absolutely fantastic. And take it from somebody who's getting on in years and had all sorts of health issues. If you apply yourself to this new fantastic science and food technology in the real sense of food, I think that there is no limit to what you can achieve.
I'm with you all the way, Simon. It's a new way of looking at our health. And I just think, you know, we're engaging a community that's of such power, and we never really realised it was even there. It's just phenomenal. Yeah.
Right, fantastic. Thank you again. That's the official end of the meeting. But if anybody's got any questions, feel free to, you can now unmute yourself and feel free to ask and engage. Okay, so the recording's stopping now.